What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. OG here, and I just finished editing. I have some very important videos coming out with regards to your preparation for FC26, whether you are a seasoned player or a brand new player coming from either eFootball or UFL. The bottom line is SBCs, evolutions, certain areas off the pitch where it's truly a skill. That's where players make many of their mistakes, right? On the pitch, you always want to train and get better. There's always room to improve, just like real football. But the same can be said for off the pitch, and not a lot of players put in the time to fix their mistakes, and therefore every year, just like on the pitch, they get sort of stuck in the mud. They get to the same spot, making the same mistakes, and they're scratching their head going, what do I do to improve? Well, I have a series of videos coming out, starting with tomorrow morning. I've been trying to upload at a consistent time. It's been 4 a.m. or around there, Central Standard Time. Every day, or nearly every day, you will have a new video that will help you to prepare to hit new heights in FC26. But when I was getting ready to wrap everything up, I saw this video, which actually came out 4 days ago. For whatever reason, they posted it on the Direct Communications X channel instead of, or account instead of their main account. And it's insane to me because this is extremely important. Anybody who's been playing FC25 lately, and even the past few years, past several years, but especially lately, it's been as bad as ever, right? Or worse than ever is a more appropriate way to describe it. But the gameplay, the inconsistency, the command delays, all of it has just been terrible. So even though I've been up the past several hours editing, making sure these videos are going to be released the best way possible, I'm dead tired. I'm going to be stuttering. I'm going to be messing up words, but it doesn't matter because now that I know this video is out, I have to watch it. And the reason why is it's so important for both myself and all of you, which I'm going to cut this down and turn it into a video as well because it's that important. But the reason why is because no matter how good FC26 is, and trust me, EA Sports put in the work, it's going to be a great game, without a doubt. But none of it will matter if the gameplay is bad. So beta-wise, we can't talk about it, but I'm at least going to tell you this inconsistent nonsense that we're seeing, especially now in FC25, that makes the game essentially unplayable, that's gone. Even high-ping games and stuff like that, the connection, you can still play, right? And that's a huge deal because many players, without a doubt, if they're not seeing these types of videos in communications, they're no doubt not going to buy FC26, which is why it's crazy to me that EA Sports didn't recognize this and allow content creators to share footage of the gameplay for the beta, at least for this year, because of just the simple fact that FC25 was so bad. So you would think they'd want to save some players from leaving because of how bad it is. You know, if they don't recognize all the changes that were made. Because any other year, if FC25 was this bad, we know that they barely make any changes typically, and myself and many others would be gone. But their numbers were so bad, which there's a Foot Accountant video where he essentially shows, just from Twitch alone, the viewership, right? Which generally, it shows you the amount of, it connects pretty well with the amount of players that are actually playing, because as you're playing, you want to stay up to date with what's going on, and so you're going to be watching, you know, other players. You're going to be trying to see who's packing who the best players are, what the meta is, all this stuff, so you're engaged with the game. And the numbers are half in some months and even worse than that in others. Some they're a little bit closer, but every single month the viewership is down from FC24, which wasn't even that great of a game either. The past several years have been bad, but this year just it all came together in just the worst way possible. So EA Sports put all that power, all that money behind totally changing the game and making it good. However, once again, everyone, including myself, is fearful of that dreaded inconsistent gameplay, which brings the worst command delay, the worst glitchy feeling. So no matter how, I'll say it again because it's important, no matter how good all the fixes are, it won't matter if this particular issue isn't fixed. So I feel like that's a good enough introduction, good enough explanation as to what this video is going to talk about, and we can decide, is what they did enough to fix these issues? Because as good as the beta is, including with, not having this command delay and all this nonsense, people could say, well, maybe once the influx of players come for the full release, all that lag and that nonsense is going to come back. We have no idea. All we can do is take EA Sports' word for it with what they've said and what they're about to say here, and then just cross our fingers and hope that, it's at least what the beta is, if not better, right? If we go the other route where it's terrible once everyone starts to play, well, one, we'll know that it's definitely something to do with the server and the amount of players on the servers, and we'll also know that the game is doomed, and that would absolutely suck because many of you are like me. We got to play our football games. We got to play the best football game, which is FC, and yeah, that would make the game unplayable. So let's hear what they have to say, and you guys let me know in the comments section if you understand this stuff, if you think that this is what was needed to fix the issue, or if you think maybe they either BS in here or they did fix the issue but they didn't tell us everything because they didn't want us to be pissed off that they waited so long. So let's see what they have to say.
Hey FC community, I'm here with Dom and Sam from the Gameplay team to talk about online gameplay responsiveness in FC 26. Over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Kyle. And yes, today we're here to talk about online gameplay responsiveness, which we know is a very important topic for the FC community. And this year, there's a lot of improvements that we're doing to make sure the game is more responsive than ever. So the first thing that we did is we worked closely with the community, with pro players, with the design council and different players around the world to understand their experience, understand how they are experiencing the input delay, how is the online gameplay responsiveness for them. And we didn't want to just listen to the feedback, we wanted to experience the issues ourselves. So we actually traveled to Europe to meet with pro players at their esports studios. We met with content creators at their homes, and we gathered basically a lot of information that allows us to measure their connections, understand their setups, discuss cases directly with them, and really get to the bottom of a lot of the causes for input delay. There's a lot of learnings out of that, and I can separate the learnings into two different areas. The first part is that input lag, input delay, or online gameplay responsiveness is a very complex space where basically what I can say is that every frame matters in the game, and with that we know that the FC community is very capable of detecting even the most minimum delay in the game. So we need to make sure the game is the most responsive possible, and that has to be a priority for us. That's the first learning. The second learning is that input delay is experienced differently across the different players. So when we talk to people, they were telling us different things. So for example, some people experience input delay the entire match, where every input is delayed. Some people experience it only in certain moments, certain specific actions, certain animations where there is delay, not the entire match. That's one example. Some people experience it only in online matches. Some people experience it both offline and online, and like that there's many different examples based on location, based on servers. So there's a lot basically to get into. Next learning is that there's multiple sources of input delay. There's not just one thing that is introducing it. It can be related to animations. It can be related to how the game reads the inputs. There's different things that we will be discussing in the next few minutes. The next
All right, we'll let them continue. But this is huge for the simple fact that anybody out there that doesn't understand, like obviously there's those trolls, the rats, that will sit there and act like they're using skill to beat a player that clearly can't move. But anybody who is logically watching the game and seeing how both their players and their opponent's players are moving, passing, shooting, right? They'll be able to tell instantly, okay, something's not right. Clearly, my opponent is experiencing delay, is experiencing issues, right? Now, I've noticed that when one player is having issues and the other isn't, okay, you'll be able to tell because one player will just have the ball the entire time. The other player experiencing the delay will barely be able to get it out of their half. They'll constantly be losing the ball because of the command delay. Like, it's just a whooping. It's just a whooping for the player experiencing the delay. I showed examples of this several different times where I would get a player after we played, in Rivals or Champs, to play me again where I was hosting the game. And just like in PlayStation tournaments, everything flipped around. Like, I'm talking, there's one, not much skill at all. He beat me 7-1. I got him to play me again. It was clear he was thinking, oh my goodness, I'll just smoke this guy again on his stream. And the game was totally different because now I could move. Now I could actually play. And it still wasn't the best connection, but as he is saying, it is different every match. Some matches, you can't move. There's even glitchiness with the players. I'm talking like all of a sudden you'll be dribbling left and your player just glitches out and goes right when it's really bad. When it's not that bad, you'll feel a little slow motion, but for the most part you can still pass and move and play close enough to the level you would normally play to where it doesn't really make a difference, right? Rarely, if ever, do I experience the game 100% how it's supposed to feel. But I know what it's supposed to feel like because of the few times that I did experience that. For whatever reason, right after the big patch, it was great for a while until it slipped. Let's see if they answer any of these questions. But it drove me crazy, just like, Inception. I share a lot of the videos he made on this. It would drive him crazy because he was letting EA Sports know this. He was letting the players know this. And, of course, there was always those trolls or idiots that just couldn't use their brain that would say, there ain't lag, that's a skill issue, or every time you lose, you just say it's lag. And it's like, all you have to do is use your eyes. You can see when the game's good for both players. You can see when one's delaying and the other isn't. You can see when both players are delayed, but at different levels, which is what he just spoke about, right? Some players experience delay the whole game. Some experience it just in spurts. Some experience it worse than others. It's not equal across the board, and it's the same with matches. Again, this is something that if you were just watching, you could see, but somehow there were so many players that were like in denial or just too dumb to see it. And that's when you'd get the comments from to me or Inception or the few players that would actually talk about this, saying skill issue and excuses and there's no delay, or the delay's the same for both players. No, it is not. So I had to stop and really emphasize that, and hopefully we can get some answers here.
Next one also is that we can confirm that most of the issues that the community was reporting was experiencing are issues that can be experienced both in online play and offline play.
Yes.
Most of those again are related to how animations work in the game, and we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about it. There's also factors that influence the experience or have an effect on the experience that perhaps apply to any game, not just FC, but that are very good to just mention, or it's just about information.
Did anybody else hear fuckters there?
Information around these topics. So, for example, playing through Wi-Fi, that's not going to be the ideal setup. It's better to go through Ethernet because when you play Wi-Fi, there can be jitter or packet loss.
We already know all this. Do not focus on this.
For example, And we know that more than 50% of FC players are playing through Wi-Fi. So if possible,
That's crazy.
it would be great to switch to Ethernet. Another learning, for example, is that the TV options or the TV settings can have an effect on your experience. If you're playing on a TV that is outside of game mode, there can be from 20 to over 100 millisecond delay to your experience. So regardless of your connection, regardless of how fast your players are, you're gonna feel like the game is delayed. So there's multiple factors that contribute to online gameplay responsiveness, but that's just the first part of the learnings. Then the second part is actually where we are doing many changes this year to make the experience better. So the first one is around animation coverage. So when we were analyzing cases that we found with the community, that we discovered with the community, in many of those cases, in the game basically didn't have the animations to perform what was requested. So for example, I'm fast incoming ball at me, and my request is a pass 180 degrees. It's a long pass, so sometimes that's very difficult to perform in real life, and then that's also going to be difficult for us to find an animation that can perform that action in the game. So in some cases, the game decides to just stop the ball and then make the pass, creating a little bit of a delay in that action. But that is just part of, basically part of football, part of how the animation system works. But this year, we are adding many more animations to make sure there's more coverage and the players can perform more actions that perhaps in the past would have taken a bit longer. That's the first area. The next area is around our animations.
So that answers that question. There are some players who were in tune with this, saying, so you fixed the issue caused by animations by adding more animations. But the bottom line is, there were certain, they like what they called trimming the fat, right? There were certain unneeded animations that just led to more delay. And then there was instances where there was like a gap where something would be triggered, a shot, a pass, something that they didn't really have an animation for, and it would create a delay while they were trying to figure out, okay, by they it means the AI, right? The user player chooses a pass or shot or whatever command, and the AI is going, okay, what do I do here? What do I do here? And it caused delay. So they added animation, so now those certain gaps are filled. Now the AI has more to choose from, and boom, it will mean quicker responsiveness. That makes sense. Once you actually hear the explanation, that makes sense. If we are to believe them, right? And then the other stuff that was unneeded, they cut out.
System, and our animation system is arguably one of the most complex systems that we have in the game, because it has to select animations based on the context. Where is the ball? Where are the opponents? How the player is moving? What's the angle of the player? The speed of the player? Do I need to stretch to get to the ball, or can I do an extra step based on the urgency of the play? And then sometimes in that system, there's bugs or there's things that need to be balanced differently. For example, I want to take a shot immediately, and I could perhaps do that shot with my left foot, but that is my weak foot. So the system may decide, no, let's delay the shot a little bit to take the shot with the right foot, because that's your strong foot. But then that means there can be a delay, and then if there's an opponent, maybe you get tackled. So we know that we need to prioritize animations in a way to create more responsiveness in the game, and maybe select the left foot in this example. So like that, there can be multiple different issues that can happen in the game. However, we're fixing dozens of problems and balancing issues in terms of animation selection to make sure the game is more responsive than ever. And then another very important point, it's animation variability.
All they showed there was that now the defender will intercept a ball, which they can, so that's good, but that has nothing to do with response delay. I get what he's saying, but they could have chose a way better example. That was a good addition for the defenders that have those balls that go ahead of them, and now that's a whole different fix. So like even in and around the box, when a defender's in range, instead of standing there and watching a shot go by and maybe it turns into a goal, they'll make that effort like they would in a game and like stick their foot out or whatever the case. So in that case, adding animations helps. So that makes sense. But again, that doesn't answer like the player not moving to make a tackle on that pass is not something that was causing delay. That's crazy. Unless they're saying in that case he would be pressing tackle and the game didn't know what to do and it caused delay. But anyway, I feel like they could have came up with a better example there.
And this one I can explain by saying we built our game to be an authentic representation of football, to look like football. And by nature, the animations that we put in the game have variability. There's different players, different abilities that we put in the game. Then we put the attributes on top of the animations to modify how fast animations can move. And like that, there's multiple layers where we adjust animations to make sure you can contact the ball. So then there's going to be differences, variability in those animations. So even when you're trying to perform a similar action, like let's say dribble turns, sometimes animations are going to be slightly longer, slightly shorter based on context. If the ball is slightly further away from me, maybe the animation to touch the ball is slightly longer. And with that, sometimes you will come across animations that are different. And that's very important to create that difference. Those differences are very important to create variety in the game, to make sure you can play for hours and not see exactly the same outcome every time. But on the other side, we understand from the community that we want more consistency in animations. So you can really learn and master how the game will perform, and you want those animations to be as fast as possible. So we are working to make sure we find that balance in between animation variability and consistency, and making sure the game is very responsive. And with that in mind is how we designed the new dribbling system, dynamic dribbling, making sure animations again are more consistent, are faster, but there's still variety in the game. And we designed multiple of our fundamentals with the objective in mind to be more responsive this year. Yes, and there is a lot more. So, Dom, what else can you tell us about online gameplay responsiveness?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different factors that lead to similar feedback. So trying to understand what's causing the online unresponsiveness is something we've really spent a lot of time looking at this year. And it's spun lots of different working groups kind of tackling things like server or client server code or the gameplay simulation, which is what we're kind of focusing on today.
All right, I do this too, and it drives me crazy when I do it. I do it really when I'm tired, which I am right now. But this is a big deal, my man. So you're going to need to speak more clearly. You're slurring a little bit there because you're nervous, or, sometimes it's hard to take what you're thinking because but to translate it into what the audience will understand. And that's when you start getting, caught up in your head on what to say, what words to choose. I do it all the time, right? But this man needs to understand this is a big deal. So he said something about servers, something about server and server code. All right, let's hear about that, because the other guy didn't talk about servers at all. And hopefully we can understand a little bit better, Mr. Dominic. I know you're probably a really smart guy making the big bucks, but come on, you got to improve here a little bit.
And in that sense, one of the more frustrating situations when it doesn't play out the way you want is a first-time pass or a first-time shot. If your player ends up taking a touch before making that shot, the chance might be gone. That will feel really unresponsive.
That is frustrating.
And that's something that we focused on a lot this year. So in terms of, animation variety and completeness in those situations, as well as the code that's behind that, we've really improved the ability to find that animation and play it out properly. But we also analyzed, the input processing system and found some areas for opportunities. So we're able to save, a whole frame of input on those situations, allowing first time passes and shots to happen a lot more often in 26 than in 25. There's been a lot of other improvements as well. If you look at the player indicator above your player's head, now that's something that we are also able to improve the responsiveness of. You'll see another extra frame early, and that makes a difference in terms of how quickly you can react to your next action or your next decision, things like that. We've added a lot of telemetry in the past in terms of tracking the details on the inputs the players are experiencing. So the lifetime of an input from the moment you pressed it to when it goes up to the server, to when it comes back, to when we simulate with it, to when we render it. And that's something we've added a lot more data this year to try and kind of close some of those gaps and get more information from the users. And this is something we can do remotely. But as you said, we did visit people, their houses, their headquarters. And I think just the conversation and experiencing it in person was very useful in terms of being able to get a feel for what they're talking about and kind of put some of their context to the data behind the scenes. And again, that's something they were able to find and fix some issues. We were also able to kind of test their sensitivity to responsiveness. So we had a device. We were able to inject different types of latency just to see how in tune. What can they feel? And there was quite a range, but some of our pro players very, very sensitive to the smallest amount of delay, which really motivated us to go after every single millisecond that we can get back in terms of this effort. And I expect
Dude, that's huge. But this is why Inception was so pissed off, guys. If you follow, content creators and stuff, you have to understand why this is such a big deal. Players like Inception, who's a top player, right? Players like myself, I'm not by any means like a Tex or Andres or anybody, but I worked my butt off since 22 to qualify and play in the FC Pro events. Literally left the game in December, not just because of the command delay and all this stuff they're talking about. That's a big reason, and it drove me crazy that no one was talking about it, but also because the game was just dog crap overall. But you got to understand that the underlying factor is this delay and this issue that's been around for years. Just imagine you work your butt off. You're in this big tournament, 9-minute halves. You're playing a game, and it could be like the first 4 minutes. It feels at least decent. You're up 2-3 nothing, or you're knocking on the door. You get a goal. Next thing you know, you can't move. And an opponent in a pro event that you're much better than, you've been out playing the whole time, but it's 9-minute halves. The game just shifts. All of a sudden, there's all this command delay, and you end up getting smoked by the end of it. And it's a pro event to literally qualify and potentially win money and to move on. And that's what you're getting, right? And so imagine that on a wider scale, even for players who work their butts off, or they play football still, they're in their playing career, and then they come after football, they can't go out, they have to rest, so they spend their free time playing FC, and they build their team, they do everything off the pitch, they pack an amazing player, and they're ready to go use them, whatever the case may be, and you finally get on the pitch where it matters most, and you can't move, or you go to shoot the ball, and it's so delayed that the opponent's keeper can easily move every shot and save it. I packed R9, the Footies R9, I packed 99 Bale. I played one game yesterday on stream to show everyone after like kind of a review stream, and you couldn't even tell it was R9 and Bale. They were so delayed, couldn't move. I ended up winning the game against a player that I was much better than by a goal, but it wasn't like, oh, that was a close game, that was awesome. No, it was horrible. And since I played the beta, I wasn't as worried even before I saw this. But now watching this, I'm extremely relieved, but also extremely pissed off. Because, as Inception said, this has been brought to them for years. And finally, I get it. It costs a lot of money to send these guys. They didn't even go around the world. That would have been the better move. Send one person each to Europe, South America, North America, right? Australia, right? We have our boy Boomfa playing in New Zealand, and I'm sure he's used to these issues from his area, but I know for a fact he experiences terrible lag. And guess what? Either tell the players don't even bother buying the game or go down there and help fix the issue. But they only went to Europe, so it's something, but it's still, they still try to penny pinch, obviously, and not, send their devs everywhere to see, because it would have been much worse in other areas than Europe, especially because they went to mainly content creators and studios for these pro teams where they have the best setups. What about your average player, right? Maybe they should have chose certain locations that are notorious for having terrible command delay and whatnot. So they did the work. It sounds like they got the issues figured out, but is the data that they got, is it enough to fix the issues everywhere? Let's hope, for one, and for two, again, they didn't go all out. Even now, they should have addressed this way earlier. But even now, when they finally realize we're losing players, we have to address this, they still, whoever signs off on sending these guys out, try to pinch pennies. Only sending them to Europe, they know the right move was send people all over the world and do what they did. We'll see if it was enough. Let's hope so, because if it wasn't, or if players from certain other continents, right, certain other parts of the world, have problems still, this is going to come back to bite them. Like, why in the world did you only go to Europe? Why in the world did you only go to these setups that they're perfected to have the best connection, instead of like the average player that might not have everything tuned up, and see what they're experiencing? Again, it's a big gamble, because EA Sports doesn't have many chances from the players. We're at that point, so let's listen on. But I am relieved and excited, because this is making sense to me, and I'm not a guy who understands this, but at the same time, you can't pat them on the back, because they should have done this years ago.
A lot more. We have some things still in the works. We're expecting a lot of data coming in from 26 that we'll be able to analyze, a lot of feedback from users that we're hoping to get. And so it doesn't stop here. I think we've made a lot of improvements, but we plan to keep going on it.
Okay, so one more important point is that the fundamentals, the gameplay fundamentals in FC26, like dribbling, like locomotion, how fatigue works, they were all designed with responsiveness in mind. So dribbling, right away, when you start dribbling, you will feel like players move more, they move faster, the ball moves more when you are dribbling, and that gives you the sense of responsiveness. Locomotion, you will feel that players are more explosive, they can move faster, they can turn faster, which also translates into more responsiveness. We redesigned fatigue to make sure that even at the last minute of the game, players still feel responsive. And then we have more responsive passes as well, where you can press the button very late when the player is about to control the ball. You can still request a pass and then get that pass. So all in, I can say that FC26 is the most responsive football game that we have ever created. And there's more improvements to the online gameplay responsiveness in FC26. For example, for the pro players, the FC Pro connections, peer-to-peer specifically, will be faster. They will be smoother. We're investing.
I just talked about this. This is what we needed for years. How much of a relief is it when EA Sports has been silent, not responding to anything for years, and then they touch base on stuff that this never happens. So let's hear about this.
In those in 26. Then we also fixed multiple issues with detecting skill moves. In some cases, you would request a skill move, but the input simply wasn't being read by the system, and you wouldn't get the player to perform the skill move you wanted. We're fixing many of those issues. And lastly, we have a new overlay as well that tells you when your connection is unstable, and also tells us information that can help us understand the problems better.
I tried this overlay, guys. I have no idea what this says, though. They need to explain this better. Look at this in the top right. I had this on in the beta, and I'm seeing, okay, the left and right analog stick, the arrows, triangle, X, shoot, square. You see all that. And then are those the two start buttons? I believe. No, the triggers. Okay. I might try this again now that I know what this is. So you have on the far sides the L1 and R1. Then you have the arrows, right? Up, down, left, right. Then you have your left and right analog stick. Then you have triangle, X, O, and square. Then finally you have R1 and R2. And when you press those buttons, you're going to be able to see like the response from the game. So I'm assuming it's going to be red if there's delay or green if there's not, or it's just only going to highlight once it gets to the game. So you may press shoot, but then you may see it highlight up in the top corner like a second later, and you know there's delay. You may go to do a step over, and then you may see a delay of when it shows up in the top corner. Either that, or it will change colors based on if it was responsive, or if there's some delay, it might be yellow. If there was severe delay, it might be red. I'm going to test that more, because at first I looked at this and I'm like, what the heck? Now that I tied it to what they're talking about, now I get it more. So I will give you some feedback. I'm not supposed to, but I don't care, because this is important on purchasing the game and understanding. And I'll let you know if this works better than, because I typically use overlays. And this isn't exactly an overlay. I'm sure it's not going to show like the actual movements of the controller, but at least it will help see if you actually have good connection. You see there in the top, unstable connection, 179 ping, and then they got like the yellow and red bars showing up there for, I guess, ping and packet loss or whatever. I don't ever understand that. I just know when you see that stuff, it's not good. Higher ping's not good. But I'll test that out, and I'll see if it gives good information that I understand. If not, I'll stick to just the overlay, or maybe you can do both. But that's interesting. I'm glad they explained that. If you have the beta, go to where you would choose overlays, and it's like the connection meter or something like that, and it will show you an example of it if you want to test it out too.
That can help us understand the problems better. And the last thing that I want to say is that all the improvements that we just went through are not just one thing that we do now and then we forget about it. We are going to continue working with the community very closely throughout the entire cycle to make sure we understand what's left in there in terms of input delay, in terms of problems that we need to fix to make sure FC26 is responsive all year round. I can already say, based on internal feedback, based on early feedback, that the fundamentals of the game are making the game more responsive, and with all the improvements that we just discussed, the game feels faster, feels better. But again, this is something that we will continue to invest in the next months and years.
All right, guys. Honest truth, you guys hear me all the time. I'm never going to give them credit. By them, I mean EA Sports or any development company if they don't deserve it. My goal is, like, if this is a terrible game and I wouldn't think it was worth buying it, I would tell you guys. If I didn't think it was worth playing it, I would tell you guys. Having played the beta, even though it's as silly as it is, we can't talk about it. You can see leaked footage and kind of get an idea. Even if I wasn't playing from the leaked footage, I can see. And having them make sense of what they fixed, I am super confident. Again, pissed off, not giving them any flowers because they should have done this years ago, but extremely relieved and confident that what they said has worked, because I've played the beta and seen the leaked footage, but also because it does make sense. Now, if I were to go play a game, which, again, I got to get some rest, but next time I'm on stream, I'll play some games with, in the back of my mind, having that relief knowing that the issues are fixed, but also pointing out the areas where the game feels bad, and we will see if we can pinpoint some of what happened in these terrible areas with what these guys talked about. Because think about it, when delays going on in the game, football games move so fast, especially on the sticks. So you're not exactly, pinpointing what each issue is. You just notice a delay in passing, delay tackle, a delay here, and the next thing you know, your opponent gets the ball, and you can just tell it feels terrible, and they shouldn't have got the ball, or they shouldn't have been able to move their keeper so late, or they shouldn't have been able to catch up and make a tackle. We will actually focus and try to pinpoint where the delay occurred, like, and what caused it, and see if we can tie it now that we have this, more defined, definitions of what's going on. And that just helps us better understand, which also helps when you get 26 and start playing. You can look for these things and you can see the improvements, but also if there starts to be issues for you, you know what to look for with regards to those issues. So these are things that we need. Players put so many hours into these games. One of the worst things, I hate hearing it, it's just a game, who cares, or you care way too much. When you put hundreds and thousands of hours into anything, you better care about it, period. I'll see players say this. There's one the other day, a ratty player destroying the game with how he played. Luckily, all the stuff he was using is removed for 26, but it's like, why would you even play that? Why would anybody be so hard on for a win in something that they would just not play football? And, oh, I'm just having fun. This is how I have fun, man. It's just a game. And then you look and they've played over 1,000 hours. Never went anywhere playing like a rat, but yet they still do it. Why am I saying this? Because anything that these players can exploit, including command delay, they're going to exploit. Anything that they can exacerbate to help them get that win that they need so bad, even though, again, if they just would put effort in to get better at the game, they would win more. But nonetheless, you can't tell them that if these guys have these issues covered, unless these ratty players can do something to make it worse, which you hear about, right? Lag spiking, using hotspots, purposely running other programs to like delay the game, which creates an issue for your opponent too, because the game has to essentially like slow down to get your input and match it, right? Because that's what players don't understand. That's where the game gets thrown off. If I go to press a tackle and it's delayed, then my opponent, instead of losing the ball because I timed the tackle right, instead they'll go running by me. Then the tackle will go through delayed after the player's already passed, and it changes the entire course of the game. So if these ratty players can get a hold of whatever these guys are talking about and do something to affect the game, they absolutely will. And while I have no proof 100%, that is the one thing we all have to watch for and make sure if we see it, we share the footage, not just witness these things happen from these ratty players and just ignore it. We have to speak up, share the footage. You don't have a channel, no big deal. Share it on your social media. Share it with me, and then I'll put it out there. And I'm not a big content creator by any means, but speaking up, getting these things out there is what separates where we're at and having all these fixes and getting EA Sports' attention from where, like, for instance, eFootball's at. No one over there speaks up. I hear time and time again, when I dove into that game some this year because of how bad FC was, you hear over and over, they're not going to listen. Konami's over in Japan. It's no big deal. It is what it is. Terrible approach. Because we're the ones who make these guys rich. We're the ones who pay them money. And you saw from 25, they don't want to lose us being customers and giving them money. So they're now finally listening because they see we're not going to put up with it anymore. That's the key. So again, make sure you're looking out for these things. We'll dive more into it when I get into games, see if we can pinpoint some of this stuff. But overall, super glad I came across this video. Wish they posted on their main account so more people could see it. But hopefully this has been helpful. I'm going to go get some rest. I will see you guys soon. Shout out Jonathan Bea. Sorry for the delayed, response to your comment. I was just focused on the video, but that means the world to me, man. For those of you watching later, he said, I love your work, man. And to be honest, that's to me like the trophy at the end of the day. More than playing anymore, which as a player, that's all I focus on, right? Was getting better, performing on the virtual pitch, because to me, this is my real football now, right? I love the game, and this is my chance to still compete, right? So once I became a content creator, it was a whole new element because helping everyone, it's similar to why I coach. I want to give back and help players reach their potential and understand these things that drive me crazy or that drove me crazy, and there's no one talking about this stuff. So I try to hit on everything that could be a problem for players or that can help players going forward. So thank you, Jonathan. That means the world. And I will see you guys soon. If this was helpful, please smash that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more coming. FC26 is going to be a great game. We're going to have a great year over here at OGFC. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.